Jony Ive and Apple go their separate ways, and Elon Musk doesn't want Twitter. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by the MacVoices Slack, available to all patrons of MacVoices. Sign up today at patreon.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is part 2 in a 3-part MacVoices live conversation. This time, the panel takes a look at what appears to be the final separation between Jony Ive and Apple, and also digs into the Elon Musk Twitter situation over whether Elon is going to or not going to buy Twitter, or is not going to be forced to buy Twitter. Let's go back and let the panel do the talking. Well, I'm going to juggle our topics a little bit because a couple of things have come up now, even as we're discussing. One, though, I wanted to make sure we got in. Mark Fuccio, I wanted to ask you, this is more of a public service announcement, and one that I'm kind of disappointed at, and I'm hoping isn't going to be the truth. But we wanted to have you talk a little bit about Drobo.
Yeah, sad situation. Drobo and its parent company and other sister corporations all filed for Chapter 11 at the end of June. So Drobo, for people who've been watching, they haven't been shipping products for a couple of years. They've always been, since the pandemic, listed as sold out on their website, Amazon, B&H, other places. So not quite sure what's going on there. I heard through some of the scuttlebutt last year that they're having disagreements with their contract manufacturer, but all things come to an end. I gladly worked there from 2005 to 2011. Did a tad of consulting for about 18 months, ending in November, December of 2015. I've got a bunch of Drobos. I have 3 on the desk surface next to me. So they don't all of a sudden get a message, oh, the company's having financial troubles and it's time to die. But a couple of people have contacted me about it, and my recommendation is that based on whenever you think you're ready, start to look for another alternate replacement. Now, it's possible the company may come out successfully. It's a Chapter 11 reorg, and looking at some of the court filings, it looks like maybe there's an infusion of cash coming, possibly, because you have Drobo. They also bought Retrospect, and a flash memory company and other things that have been running as independent divisions under a holding company called StoreCentric. But it's who knows what's going to happen. Because notoriously in bankruptcy, people get emotional and they get greedy, and great deals can blow up. So I think best thing is sort of things I'm looking at are Other World Computing. They have some really great DAS Thunderbolt products.
Synology.
Synology, yeah, Synology is NAS. I think a lot of people talk about NAS, and a lot of geeks slam Drobo because they weren't a NAS company. NAS was at most 20% of their business. The bulk of their sales were in direct attached storage. USB, various flavors, eSATA, Thunderbolts of various flavors. So NAS was just sort of a just piece of bread to sop up the extra gravy left over on the plate. It's not absolutely key to what it was doing. And I think maybe the recent management team, I think they got maybe suffer from the head fake of have to be NAS company, and they were focusing on NAS products, which for creatives, as everybody knows, for Apple for a long time, even Apple does not really have a strong NAS solution. They're really great on DAS. You plug the storage into your Mac, and then you can enable file sharing from your Mac, which is a much better NAS solution than anything that Synology or QNAP or any of the other companies out there have. But that's water under the bridge. And I think from back in 2007 when it launched, the market's changed, and a variety of things I think are really eroded the competitive need for a Drobo. Number one, the rise of streaming services like Netflix, and Apple TV, and all the others, Disney, etc., as well as music streaming, and that mitigated the need for people to have big, safe, secure storage to house their digital library media collections. Then the other thing, frankly, was hard disks took off in size. I mean, we were joking earlier about Prime Day. Well, you can get a WD 12, or maybe it was Seagate 16 terabyte NAS drives for about $250 ballpark. It's not, the page is not in front of me at the moment. So
Western Digital.
Yeah, so those are enormous, and if you have two of those, that basically took a swipe at the Drobo's big storage pool that can grow as you need it. The hard drives came up. Now certainly there are a lot of people out there have tons of media that they get an 8-drive Drobo and they fill it up with 8 or 16 or 12 or 10 terabyte drives. But that's an important, profitable but small part of the market. So it's sad to see it happen, but this is life, in the Silicon Valley, and founded in 2005. That's had a 17-year run. So that's long as far as a lot of startup companies in this valley. So time to move onward. And if anyone has questions, if they're listening in the chat rooms, fire them away, or you contact me at Twitter at MARKFUCCIO. And so long the king is dead, long live the king.
Yeah, Mark, I'm with you, and Drobo holds a soft spot for me, first of all, because that was where you and I first met, when you were manning a booth at Macworld. And I walked up and said, "Tell me about Drobo." And here we are, all these years later, and it's been a great friendship and a great relationship. And there are Drobos in the background here that you can see. There are more Drobos in this room than I care to confess to, and I still have FireWire Drobos running. So they're great hardware. I guess my biggest concern about all this would be the software support for them going forward. That's one of the big potential bugaboos. So we will see. I wish them the best and hope that they come out of Chapter 11 and everything goes back to being the way it has been. But if it was something that Mark and I decided we better mention, because I know I've advocated for Drobo for a long time. Obviously, he has, and you should be aware of some of those things. Next up. I want to copy this and throw this in the chat room. Oh, shoot. No, that was not it. Sorry. Okay, well, I know it's here. I just got to find it. But apparently Jony Ive and Apple have terminated their design-based relationship. And Jim, you just put this in the chat room, in our private chat room, as a hot story.
He'll survive.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's true.
I think he'll be all right.
I assume it was his idea.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know. But this, I mean, I think it's really,
I don't
really
think anyone's shocked about it. But I'm not. I mean, this wasn't going to last that long. I think, the first step was getting him out of Apple, and this was sort of a string to kind of hold on to him, and it's not going to last forever.
Anybody else surprised by this, or have any specific reaction to it?
Not surprised.
Yeah, I don't know.
No? Okay. Well, maybe it's not as big a deal as I thought it was.
I mean, it might be a big deal to some people. I mean, his firm has been poaching a lot of designers from Apple as it is anyway, so he's going to have a lot of employees for his design firm as it is, and has he definitely has left a legacy for Apple, that's for sure. But he's pretty much not been active other than being a consultant for a lot of years. So
yeah,
I wonder what it is he wants to do anyway.
He wants to retire. He's good at getting. I think so. I mean, how old is he?
Well, he's not retiring.
I know, but he's trying to work less so he has more life, I think. That's why I left Apple.
Well, he could not work at all, and he apparently is not doing that. So
yeah, on some people it's hard to stop because you're famous and good, but
I don't know. I mean,
like Mick Jagger.
If you read the After Steve book by Trip Mickle, it's really an interesting profile of not just of Jony, but he figures prominently in the book, and he really is a designer's designer. You know, to the point, and we've had the discussions here about someone who values design even over functionality at times, to the product's detriment. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see, you know, what he does if he ever comes back to the mainstream, or if he just goes off into some of those more exotic design projects that you see that really don't have a place in the mainstream, but are lauded by design fanatics.
Well, it seems like that's the direction he was going in. And it seemed the last couple of years at Apple, he got involved in designing, the glass and other things for the building, then doing ceramic watches and other things. So he's been experimenting with different, sorry, I have a dog panting here, but he's been experimenting with different material.
Yeah. So
seems like most people are pretty happy with the direction of Apple design since he's been not involved. So I think that makes this less of a story.
Jim, the one thing I don't know is I don't know how much of his design philosophy is carried over into what products. I mean, obviously the farther in time we get away from his involvement at Apple, the more we're going to see,
Right. But you look at laptops have gotten thicker with more ports, which seemed to be the opposite of the trend when he was there.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's a course correction going on.
Yeah. So, I think people are like, yay. So, not that I'm necessarily saying this, but I think people might be like, oh, good. There's no chance he's coming back and screwing that up again.
Yeah, that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, he did so much for Apple and so much.
Absolutely.
The iPhone hasn't changed much since he left.
I think,
the iPhone's almost the same. Maybe just a little thicker. I think they made it a little thicker.
Well, I don't know. Look at that camera bump.
Yeah,
keeps getting after him. Pretty soon it'll be a camera bump with a phone attached to it.
Yeah, I'm sure Tim Cook doesn't like that either. I mean, it doesn't take a designer to say that doesn't look great on a phone. But
no, but physics.
But it does take more, and it does take somebody to make the call. At what point do you elevate design?
Right, and that's what happened when Jony was there. It was harder to make the call with Jony Ive saying, no, just keep going with my direction. This is how I see an end of what I'm looking at with thinner and lighter and no ports. And his end was going to be like this great machine that doesn't need ports and doesn't need to be thicker. But then people said, no, that's not what we want. So then, but Jony would fight. And then ever since he left, now Tim Cook doesn't have anybody to fight with over that. So
imagine thickening the depth, of the iPhone so that, all of the cameras were within the phone instead of bumping out, and then using that extra internal volume for battery. I'm not sure. I mean, that probably give you 50%, 60% more battery life. I think that would be huge and enormous.
Yeah, I know,
pretty heavy, though.
Yeah, nobody's going to want to carry. My wife will look at the new phone and not know anything about it and say, "No way! Look at that! I'm not carrying that."
Well, so you can get an SE. I mean, they have plenty of room in their product line.
Well,
you get what I'm saying. The normal consumer is not going to. That's what Johnny's philosophy is. The normal consumer cares less about battery life and some.
And I think in that regard, he's wrong. I argue. I think channeling some of what Jim was alluding to is he got carried away, and he ceased, his vision ceased to being helpful to their Macs, and it was actually destroying functionality for a lot of power users. So,
but he had an end game. He had a vision of where he wanted to go in the company, and he had a vision of 20 years from now, what an iPhone is going to look like, and what a MacBook is going to look like, or whatever the goggles or watch is going to look like. And he had to convince the board every year to not listen to most of the people who, like us, wanted more ports. And we wanted better battery, but there's also
wanted borders on buttons so that you could tell they were buttons.
People want. Eventually, Tim Cook watched The Simpsons with the Homer car and says, there's a point where we got to stop listening to everything that people want in a product and make big boy decisions on how the product's going to look. Otherwise, that's a struggle, right? So that's a struggle between a designer and the CEO who has to put it out.
So anyway, long and short of it, he had a good run, and the world changes, and people and companies diverge and need to go in different directions. So that's what happened. I wish him good luck.
Yeah, and who knows? It doesn't mean that a deal can't be re-inked or renegotiated, and he comes back in some fashion. Honestly, it doesn't seem likely, but hey, never say never.
Right. If he should do the keynote videos with the guy with the hair, that would be his calling. If they just brought him back to do the videos with the hair.
But he supposedly didn't like doing that.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be the joke.
I think he always seemed to be happier being in the background, and pulling the strings.
He's the designer. He didn't want to be in the spotlight.
Yeah. Today's Mac Voices is supported by the MacVoices Slack. The MacVoices Slack is where you can connect with the members of the MacVoices Live panel and other MacVoices patrons. Get in on the discussions, agree or disagree with our opinions, and get your voice heard. Sign up at patreon.com/MacVoices. And thanks for supporting MacVoices. I was not going to touch this story, but Mark kind of has forced me to.
Oh no!
Warren, what did you say that this is? Elon Musk bingo?
Yeah, if his filter produces these, I don't know if you guys see it, but like little check marks on some of the Elons, and it looks like they come and go. So it looks like he's crossing them out and playing tic-tac-toe or bingo.
Oh yeah, the I see what you mean now. Now I know what you're referring to. The way the camera's handling the background.
Just an observation.
Does anybody have any thoughts on this? I mean, is Elon wrong? I know right now, the way I understand it, Elon says that Twitter has overstated the number of bots on the platform, understated the number of bots on the platform, or really can't tell them how many bots are on the platform. And Twitter says it's given everything that Elon asked for and more, and they know exactly how many bots, which that in itself scares the daylights out of me, because then if you know how that you have that many bots on there, shouldn't you be doing something about it? But that's a whole other discussion. Who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy here? I mean, it seems like Elon's taking a lot of heat for this, but I'm not sure that if I buy his argument, I would not feel real good about trying to put down 40 anything.
Right, exactly.
Well, so you shouldn't have signed a contract that said, I'm doing this and I'm giving up, I don't need any due diligence.
Jim, ultimately this is going to be the legal gray area of if he relies on their SEC reportings, and those are subsequently proved to be materially false, even though he didn't have necessarily due diligence period, does that preclude his reliance on stuff that under Sarbanes-Oxley, Jack Dorsey and now Parag, whatever his last name is now, and their CFO, have to sign and attest to the accuracy of. So I think this is going to be a really interesting court case.
Chuck, to answer your question, I think Elon was never really serious about this deal. This is a guy who tweets something about dogs and crypto, and the crypto markets changed. He likes doing that, right? He likes playing with the stock. He likes the fact that he's this one guy who could affect markets in different directions. And I think
right, he's done with Tesla.
So yeah, he does that with Tesla all the time. Tesla, he'll say something and it never happens, and then he does it all the time. So he just somehow, I don't know how it's legal that he does it, but whatever, he does it.
They've gone after him.
$1 billion. I'm sure the guy doesn't want to lose $1 billion to get out of it.
Well, from what I'm reading, 1 billion is the floor. It's not the ceiling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Twitter is not asking for $1 billion. They're asking for 44 billion.
They want him to.
The initial thing was a breakup, like a breakup fee, is what they were saying, right? In the beginning,
right? But Twitter's not. They're saying no breakups. You
need they said that now. Initially, that's what they were saying. Initially, the contract had that. The contract had the breakup fee. So I don't know. So if the contract had a breakup fee of $1 billion and Elon broke up, I think it's cut and dry. He's going to pay the $1 billion, and that's going to be it. To be honest with you.
Right. And that's why I think, there's this, I think there's probably two negotiations, or thoughts of negotiation strategy. One is, okay, this puppy is not worth $44 billion. Not
anymore.
Not anymore. It's back down to almost where it was pre-pandemic.
Right.
Today, market value is 26 billion. And even that seems like maybe that's 1.8 times the S&P. Sorry, 2.2 times the S&P average PE multiple. So Twitter has, I think, a long way more way to go down than it has to go up. So that's one thing. And Twitter, their board, they got sucker punched at is 54.20 offer per share. So they want to sell at that price. Otherwise, they look like fools and incompetence to their shareholders. Musk, I don't think they saw this coming. His concern about spam bots. That's why I think this is in a clear, interesting legal case of. Yes, he forego due diligence in terms of additional interrogation with the management team, but he's relied on their public findings, and he's offered good faith evidence that the 5% number is wrong, and Twitter just stonewalled him for several weeks. It's very complex, and we can only tell you, only God could figure it out, and then we have to shoot him because it's all of our top secret proprietary information that we can't tell anybody. And then Musk went on a number of podcasts and things and was saying, "Oh, I think it's easily 20 or 25, and might even be 50%." And then I think that put Twitter on the defensive. And then they came back and basically said, "Okay, here, we'll let you have everything. We'll have access to the daily feed." I think they're hoping just to drown them in a spray of data. So who knows what he's discovered since then. So we're back. He's saying, "Okay, you guys, your public filings are materially wrong. You're continuing to not give me the information I need and request," which he hasn't enumerated what that is in his letter to break up. I suspect he's keeping his powder dry for a court case. So, right now we're having two parties, one saying, we're suing you to close the deal as is. Now, one thing about that is there was a contingency that, a lot of the reports are saying, "Oh, well, there's a specific performance clause in the contract." Twitter is suing him to insist that he go through and he purchase it as long as his debt financing is in place. Well, at this point, if you were any of those lenders, would you be willing, to go through, because the issue about spam bots, directly will affect their revenue, their ability to generate revenue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, that money is going to be scarce, and this is not going to be there. So I think on that face of it, yes, he has a defense that he doesn't need to buy it. And the other thing is, yes, he negotiated, if this breaks up, it's seemingly for any reason, then he's on the hook for $1 billion. So does he want to forego his $1 billion, or would he rather buy it at some number like, say, 10 or 12 or $13 billion, 75% off of the original deal? And for that, we can have lots of barroom discussions and barroom fights and debates, but we'll never know until, the experiment runs out in real time. They go to court and we see what actually happens. And since then, I say, get a bunch of popcorn, get your favorite adult beverage. It's going to be really fascinating to continue to watch this.
Yeah.
One thing that I saw today that was interesting was the question of, let's say Delaware Chancery Court rules against him.
Mm-hmm.
How do they enforce that? And that one of the ultimate casualties of this may be the prestige or, whatever, the credibility of Delaware Chancery Court. Because they may have no way to enforce a ruling against him.
It's, as I say, just get your popcorn.
Get your popcorn.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Mike, you're sitting there looking very thoughtful. Any opinions on this or feelings about this?
I was just thinking that Elon Musk is a spam bot, and I think he's afraid of the competition.
Yeah.
I think that could
I like that. That's a good point.
Wow.
But that really doesn't have anything to do with it. I mean, I don't care if he loses $1 billion.
No,
that's awesome.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, he's lost way more than that just in Twitter stock declines. So.
I think it was Mark who made a good point that, sure, he breaks up, he pays $1 billion, market value goes down, he swoops in again, buys it up for a fraction of what he was originally going to buy it for.
Well, yeah, the other interesting question is,
Jim?
Will Twitter survive? Or maybe Microsoft will buy it, or Oracle, or...
I would much rather have Microsoft or Oracle. I'd much rather have Microsoft buy Twitter than I guess Oracle wouldn't be too bad. I'd rather have Microsoft.
I'd rather have Microsoft.
I'd rather have Microsoft buy.
I don't know, guys. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to, disappear and vanish and go away. It's
well, I hope it doesn't. But MySpace, anyone? I
was just on it 10 minutes ago. What are you talking about?
MySpace or Twitter?
Yeah,
I don't think I was much on it when it was a thing.
Again, MySpace or Twitter?
MySpace. Twitter is about the only social network I am on. I will never be on Facebook. Technically, I guess I'm on it, but I'm not there. Don't bother sending me a message on Facebook. I'll never ever see it.
Mike, we're kindred spirits. I'm exactly the same.
I am also.
Yeah. Every day I consider whether today is the day I
got all your checks.
My Facebook accounts.
The Nigerian prince was trying to reach the three of you on Facebook, and he reached me because I checked my Facebook.
And you now have $1 billion.
I now have all the money.
There you go.
And
my
Twitter. I'm buying Twitter.
So you can.
You had to give them $100,000 in advance, Warren.
You give them $100,000 and ship them computer parts. Yes.
Hey, I'm throwing a link sort of to wrap this part of the conversation up. I'm throwing a link into the video version of Lex Fridman's podcast. Mark turned me on to this podcast a long time ago. The particular link I just threw in is a conversation with Elon Musk that is really, in my opinion, worth listening to, because the guy, just whether you like him, whether you don't like him, he has a different way of looking at things, and to ignore him is, I think, to really not give enough credit to a different way of approaching some of the problems we have, and not just Twitter necessarily, but pretty much everything he's involved in. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I can't recommend this podcast highly enough. It's one of those super lengthy podcasts that can go for 2 or 3 hours. So you better be prepared My personal way of dealing with it is I look at who the guest is, and if it's somebody I'm interested in, I'll listen. If not, I'll skip over it. But they're always really great conversations. And so, Mark, thank you for turning this onto this, because I look at it and I think, oh, there's another 3-hour interview. But then I go through the 3-hour interview and it's like, yeah, there's a lot of good stuff here. So
I think that was a Christmas or Mac, a gift guide recommendation.
I believe so. And I've, dug in, and and Lex himself is kind of an interesting guy. And by the way, it's not the Lex Fridman you might know from Macworld days.
Right.
It's a whole nother Lex Fridman. So the Mac Voices Live panel is back in the next edition of Mac Voices to wrap up our discussion of Elon Musk with some surprising conclusions. We also take a look at Apple's shipments versus their competition and the failure of an iPad competitor. That's next time on Mac Voices. I hope you'll join us. Until then, and as always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.